Good evening, Planning Commission. The time is now 6 o'clock, and we'll go ahead and get this meeting started. Just as a reminder to our commissioners, when you are speaking, please make sure to unmute your microphone so you can be heard on the broadcast. The public that did not register in advance can watch the stream live on our city's YouTube channel. If you're needing Spanish translation services, please call 720-386-9023 and use code 104091 * to get live Spanish translation services.
I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Will staff please do a roll call?
Commissioner Sanchez,
Present.
Commissioner Van Heusen,
Present.
Commissioner Biltoff,
Present.
Commissioner Schechter,
Present.
Commissioner Eggleston.
Present.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Will everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I have a motion to approve the December 3rd meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Good.
Please open electronic voting.
Sorry, point of clarity, is it the January meeting minutes? Or have the December meeting minutes already been approved or not approved? Do we know?
This would be for the January meeting minutes, and then we need to, on the December meeting minutes as well. We need to do both because there was a correction on the December meeting minutes related to the attendance, which I think that needed to be updated.
I thought we approved them as amended then, with the December ones.
Did we approve them as amended? So this would just be for the meeting minutes from the previous meeting last month, in January.
Yeah, my recollection was that at the time you approved them with the condition that that correction was made, which was made. So I think they've been approved and don't need to be voted on again. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
So as stated by staff, can I have a motion, can we have a new motion to approve the meeting minutes as stated by staff? That they were clarified just for a point of clarity, that the meeting minutes were approved as noted. I'm getting way off the rail, so.
Yeah, I think we don't need a motion for that because they were approved as corrected the last meeting.
Right, so we don't need to address December.
So the motion that we have in front of us is okay, because that's what we were voting on, was on the January.
Just to vote on January.
Okay,
that's
so
right.
okay.
You did say December, so maybe that's where I got confused.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, it was incorrect in the script, so let me restate. Can I have a motion to approve the point of clarification? When was the January Planning Commission meeting?
January 3rd.
The January 3rd meeting minutes. There we
So
go.
moved.
So moved. Second.
We have a
Sorry,
first.
it seems it was January 7th. We're going to get there in the end.
All right.
Yeah.
Point of clarity. Can we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December 7th? Or January 7th, good night, January 7th. Motion to approve meeting minutes from January 7th. Good night.
So
Yeah,
moved
so
for the third time.
Second.
Please open electronic voting, as that whole was not confusing. The motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstain. I will ask the planning manager, Heather Vidlock, to please announce the first case.
Sorry, just again for clarity, you're reopening the hearing or are you not?
We've already opened the hearing.
The hearing for this case specifically? The only reason I ask is because you have closed it previously.
We had continuous, we had continued this motion, so do I need to reopen?
Yeah. Yes, if you want to have public comment again and have a public hearing, then you will
Yes.
need to reopen this case as it was
Okay.
closed before voting on continuing it.
Okay. So I would like to reopen the case PUD 23-004, Car Wash Pro Designers on behalf of Noli Enterprises.
I can read that part. I got you. All right, here we go. PUDA 230004, Car Wash Pro Designers on behalf of Nolly Enterprises LLC is requesting approval of the Burlington Northern Catellus PUD document, or PUD zone document, excuse me, amendment number 6 to modify allowable commercial uses to specifically allow a car wash. The subject property is approximately 1.06 acres and located at 12411 East 104th Avenue. This case was previously heard by the Planning Commission at December 3rd, subsequently continued on January 7th. At this time, I will now ask the applicant to come forward to address the commission with a staff presentation to follow.
Good evening to the commission. My name is Alan Jacob. I am with Car Wash. I'm sorry.
Yes.
That'll work. Good evening to the commission. My name is Alan Jacob. I am with Car Wash Pro Designers, one of the representatives on behalf of the applicant.
Nick Spallone, Car Wash Pro Designers, on behalf of the applicant as well.
So we had a hearing in December on this, and it was continued, and we made some modifications and changes. We also added some additional media for the commission to view and the public to view. What's in front of you now is one of the renderings of the building as it will look. As you can see, the design is aesthetically pleasing. When people think of a car wash, they usually think of a loud, industrial-looking, obnoxious-sounding building. But as you can see, this is what car washes are looking like now. This is a state-of-the-art facility. It's designed to look like modern bank. It fits the aesthetics of the other buildings around it. It looks, in my opinion, I think it looks a little better than the Starbucks behind it. The towers are a very nice addition, and a lot of times we find that clients and people who drive by these do not realize it's a car wash unless they see that it says Express Car Wash on the side of it. So this is how the building would look along 104th. Is the side on? Yep. Sorry about that. No worries. Thank you.
He needs to put it in.
He's got to plug it. Oh, okay. Plug it in. Okay. No worries. Ready? Okay. The second slide is an aerial view. It shows how the parking lot will be laid out, how the building is laid out in relation to the other buildings, where the vacuums are, where the lanes are, where the pay lanes are, and two-way traffic in between the building and the vacuum canopies. This is another rendition with the monument sign in front of it. This is the vacuum side, showing vehicles exiting the car wash, and they can swing around to the open parking lot, and these vacuums are free to use by the customers.
We also made a point to hide all the equipment. We used the canopies with the standing seam metal roofs, wrapped the columns in the same stone and brick to continue the aesthetics, but we didn't want the equipment to be seen from the outside, so we did our best to shadow it or hide it within design features with the canopies.
This is, I think you can see that brick containment center is where a lot of that, the vacuum systems and the trash enclosure is. So you do not see any of those materials, nor would you hear it because it's encased into that brick building there. And this is another viewpoint showing vehicles able to move in and out of the parking lot. The internal design is so that there is sufficient stacking allowed so that there will be absolutely no backup onto any of the public roadways. This is an aerial view of the landscape design. You can see where we intend on planting certain landscape. You can see the tower aerial view, the aerial view of the parking lot with the vacuums where they would be, and the internal circulation of traffic.
And the client is open to additional landscaping if the board requests more. So this is our interpretation of the code. Whatever the committee asks for, anything additional wise, the client is open to add whatever based on any recommendation.
This is the viewpoint from the neighbor's house, I think? Yeah. So this is a viewpoint from a neighbor's house across the entryway. And as you can see, there's an additional lot next to the car wash where it's proposed to be, where there is nothing there yet. And we highly believe that something will be developed on that lot. I think it's about an acre. So it'll create an additional buffer between any of the neighbors' viewpoints to the car wash. And as you can see from the car wash, all you see is the towers. And it's blocked by additional shrubbery landscaping. This is another viewpoint from the neighbors as well.
property.
Neighboring property as well. And you can see there's landscaping in between. And there's going to be probably a building between us and the neighbor's viewpoint too, which will block sound, light, and viewability.
This is from the deck of one of the homes.
Yeah, this is the deck from one of the homes. It's a rendering of how it would look without the building in front of it where it would be developed. And then there's an aerial view in the top left corner where the lot currently sits vacant.
What we wanted to demonstrate here is a lot of times, architects will put in renderings and they never ever turn out anything like the rendering, ever. So what we wanted to show here was what this building looks like completed. The stone colors, the facades, the brick colors. This is 4 examples of 3 separate washes that have all been done with the same exact material, the same exact bricks and stone. The only difference between the two, if you notice the 2 slides at the bottom, the actual the cornice flashing on the slide to the right is actually a bronze flashing. We didn't like how that looked. So all the future buildings have cream flashing to match the cornice, to make the cornice look a little bit thicker. So other than that, all the new buildings have non-bronze cornice flashings. But that's what they look like complete. This is an interior view of the buildings. We don't really call them car washes. We call them luxury auto spas. So, we really bring it to the to that word luxury. It's meant to pamper the client without having the high price. So, you know, we try to bring as much of that in as we can. Every station is manned, which is very different than most washes. We make sure the clients are explained what's going on. They help process the payment. You know, there's a lot of customer service involved in this brand. One pale difference between us and any other wash in the town is the belt. A lot of car washes you go to have a track system. What's unique about the belt is it'll accommodate dualies like you see in the photo to the left, vehicles that have wide tires, people that are concerned about getting their wheels ground up with the track. So this accommodates that. Low riding vehicles, tall vehicles. So this just accommodates more vehicles than what the typical washes around here do. And this also is a fully touchless option too. So if the client chose to not have the friction, which are what you see on the yellow vehicle on the right, that yellow truck is actually going through the touchless version. That's why you don't see the brushes spinning or touching the vehicle. So you have an option to do fully touchless in this facility as well.
Yeah, and based upon our research, we believe that there will be one other one in the greater Denver area, I think it's in Aurora, that has the conveyor and the touchless option combination.
The reason why we included this slide, it's very important. We had a meeting in a town of ours in Illinois, and this building was actually positioned right in front of a retirement community, 50 and older retirement community. We probably had 400 residents show up in opposition to this facility. It turns out that once the building was up and they realized all the bad things they assumed would be there were not there, the town voted to approve this as the architectural building of the year. So this was just recently voted, I think just a couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks ago, as the architectural building of the year. And this is the building we'll be placing in your town. So we have created a couple of sound study versions, one with a wall and one without a wall. This shows the version without the walls and what that sound would look like. These are very technical reports. I've been doing this for 20 years. I can barely understand half of what they write in these things. What we ended up doing was we actually went into this exact facility and filmed what the ambient sound would be at a quiet night with very little traffic, brought the sound mechanism inside the building, and then had a car run through it, and just to prove the sound levels, which would, you know, are very consistent with what you're seeing on this slide here. We're probably 30 feet from the exit door. Listen to how quiet it is. This is 1 a.m. in the morning, so I'm very tired.
Why did you whisper it in the stream? Okay.
Now we're gonna have this big blow up doll here. And by the way, you hear that noise? Let's go back. Let's go back maybe 30 feet. Let's take a There was a comment at the last hearing, where they said that the conveyor system was so loud you couldn't carry a conversation and people would hear it for 2 miles. So what we did in this video was show what that conveyor sounded like, fully operational, while we were standing on it. Anthony Spallone with Car Wash Pro Designers. We're doing a sound check on what the ambient noise is. at Nova Car Wash in Carroll Stream. We're on Gary Avenue side of the site. We're going to be quiet to hear the ambient noise for a second. All right, let's go in. We decided to leave the conveyor going because we were told that the conveyor is so loud that the neighbors have no idea. So now we're gonna do another sound check. You can see the conveyor is going. Can somebody stand on that conveyor to show it's moving? Anybody? All right, what's your name?
Jason.
All right, let's hear a sound check. It's actually quieter in the building than it is outside. The last video demonstrated a physical car going all the way through the tunnel, and we're at the side of the building, and we'll actually go to the exit side, which is what they consider the noisiest part of the building, which would be the opposite side of the resident, which on this site would be the Starbucks side of the building. So this would be from the main road view. So we're at a truck stop, Nova building. Got trucks moving around. Trying to get ambient noise here, which is at 56. All right, go. Red. If you notice, all the things are spinning inside. Trying to prove out the noise. All the equipment is going. We're approximately at the residential line on the west side of the site. This was for the Algonquin project. That's what we were referring to, residential wise. We're trying to prove how loud the wash is. By the way, it's going. All the equipment is on. There's a car going through, as you can see. All the equipment is going. Here, talk to me.
It's a normal conversation voice.
Talk low.
Actually, it's probably a little quieter than normal
Talking
conversation.
as low as we can. Can anybody hear any of this equipment? Any of it? Mind you, there's a car going through. Now we're gonna walk through to the front. By the way, you hear that semi? It's normal. The one thing you won't hear is my voice when we leave. The button on the side. Open the door and the button on the side. Right now we're at 62, 61. Mike, say hi. Hi. Say it as low as you can. Say it in normal voice. Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Hi.
Here comes the car through the wash. Trying to walk as low as I can. This is the exit of the wash, by the way, is the loudest part of the physical building. Notice it's on the conveyor. Notice the car is moving. Notice you hear there it is. There comes the car out of the building as close as we can get to it. walk over there and say hi. There goes the car. All right. Say hi, Mike.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
All right, there goes the car. Where's all the noise? That's it. Car went through. So, you know, the sound studies are the sound studies, but that's the truth. I mean, what you're looking at there is what that sound will let off noise-wise. The building fully operational. Of course, if you have 30 cars going through, there's going to be 30 cars going, but you hear more of the traffic from outside of the building than you do physically from the building.
Is that the last slide? I believe so, okay. So in closing, there's just a couple of things we want to mention. One, as you know, we submitted a traffic study conducted by KLOA, which is a,
No.
was it KLOA?
No, it was
another
Colorado.
one. A traffic study was
Reviewed by their
reviewed
engineers.
by the engineers of the city of Commerce City. It was accepted. It would not cause any new traffic or problems along 104th or any of the entries or exits. We also, as part of this Planning Commission hearing, we conducted a neighborhood meeting on October 24th. And in that meeting, Turnberry Homeowners Association President and Vice President, Jeff Trizak and Rob Hodnett came to that meeting, and we discussed the project with them. We obtained their contact information, and we shared all our files with them, and we asked them to share those files with the homeowners and the Homeowners Association of Turnberry. And we heard no complaints, no suggestions, no phone calls, no anything. Rob liked the project, he liked the building, he liked the design, and he did not object to it. Additionally, we understand that we're before the Planning Commission. We understand we still have to go before City Council on a first reading and second reading. And we also understand that we have to go through a permit phase, which will require us to have a review of what kind of material we're using on the building, the landscape design, the width, the height, the depth, the setbacks, all of that. And our client is willing to work with the neighbors of Turnberry to add whatever they want to see added to address their concerns, so long as it meets city code. And we understand that we still have a long path ahead of us, but we believe this is a really good fit for the town. We believe we're bringing something unique to people who have vehicles that have a lot of sensors and guidance and other add-ons to them that would require them to go through a belt system or a touchless option. So with that, we would hope that the commission would approve this and move it forward to City Council. I don't know if you want to add anything.
I'm good.
All right, now for the staff presentation here. So before tonight, Turnberry Car Wash, as we're calling it internally, formally case number and ordinance number PUDA 23-0004. Just as a reminder for you all tonight and for those tuning in for the first time this evening, before the commission here is a PUD amendment. So what does that mean? Well, it's officially changing the zone district on the property. The zoning of the property determines what uses are allowable or not allowed, sets the bulk standards such as setbacks, lot size, building heights. The actual development details, kind of what they were discussing there with their landscape plan, site circulation, architectural elevations on the exterior of the building. All of that will be reviewed later with a development plan. So tonight, the Planning Commission will be deciding whether the zoning and the associated rules for how the property can be developed and the uses, if those should change. An aerial of the site outlined there for you in red. The vicinity or zoning map, as you can see, it's zoned Turnberry or the Burlington Catellus PUD, all for the surrounding properties and for the properties across both the South Street and the street to the east. Again, the location there, 12411 East 104th Avenue. They're wanting to amend the PUD zone document. The character areas in the northern neighborhoods, and more specifically, this site is classified as Northern Range Commercial. Here's that character area map, kind of it's outlined there in the little black square there. And then again, outlined in black, the subject property for Northern Range Commercial. Here's some site photos taken from the site. This was taken previous to the December hearing, but the site remains the same, vacant. This is the view from 104th, looking towards the Starbucks and Domino's to the west and north. As mentioned by the applicant, a neighborhood meeting was held on October 24th. Applicants mailed letters to a 500-foot radius. 2 residents were in attendance. The questions and concerns were primarily about noise level of the dryers and how the site will be accessed, ingress and egress for the site. As a result of the neighborhood meeting, staff has proposed a few conditions, those being noise levels of the property line shall not exceed 50 decibels. The minimum stacking spaces. Stacking spaces would mean the number of waiting spaces to enter the tunnel shall be 5 or greater. And then that the stacking should be screened from public rights of way, primarily 104th Avenue. These are the same conditions proposed as the December meeting. These have not been modified due to the noise study. So that will be a discussion point here in a second that I'll show you. So prior to the December meeting, staff had received no public comment. At the December meeting, public commenters came forward. Those concerns can be categorized within the following 5 categories: financial viability of a car wash, the traffic impacts, trash impacts, noise impacts, and air quality. Written comments were received prior to this meeting. They have been provided to you digitally and physically. You should have them up there with you at the dais. Those concerns were fit into the first category there, financial viability of a car wash. Staff has conducted a review of what city standards are in place to help address these concerns. I won't go through them unless there's questions. They were provided for you in the supplemental staff report. So if you have questions on them, we can come back to these. But here they are, what our staff analysis was. The one thing that we did want to draw your attention to as a new piece of information was the noise study. So the image on the right is the noise study provided to you, showing the 8 foot tall walls to be installed that would kind of knock down the noise at the property line. And then the image on the left was the one included in the applicant's presentation showing the no walls. So to kind of help you interpret this, they placed noise meters at the yellow dots, and then the white boxes show the noise level at that location or sensor. And so as you can see, with no noise walls at the property line, it's about 56 on the western side and 57 on the eastern side. And so that is over the 50 decibels proposed as a condition. So in order to accomplish the 50 decibel requirement, they would need to install 8-foot walls. Like I said, that's probably a discussion point for this commission on if we would want those. I think staff has some reservations about the visual impacts and disrupting the contiguity of the site and how it relates to its neighbors. And we can kind of, like I said, discuss that a little further if it's of interest to the commission. We did want to point out that the Land Development Code would restrict those walls to 6 feet in height. So if we needed to do the 8-foot tall walls, we would have to specifically allow them in the zone document. And they're not a requirement of code other than the proposed conditions. So if you wanted the walls, we would have to specifically require the walls to be built. Like I said, if you have questions on that, we can kind of go back over some of those points since this is a new piece of information for you all. Staff conducted an analysis. The property is surrounded by commercial zoning and commercial uses. Some developed, some vacant. The road network impacts revealed through the traffic study show that the property will take access from the private drive on the north side, and that the service levels are not expected to change. I think the traffic study indicated a 0.05% change in traffic. And like I said, that was reviewed by our city engineers, and they agreed with the methods and conclusions from that study. And then the noise study revealed that there would be minimal impacts to surrounding property areas. The ambient noise level on 104th averaged about 65 decibels. And so at the property lines, they were showing somewhere between 56, 58, something like that. So compared to the ambient traffic on 104th, it would be less, or the noise level would be less from this proposed project. This is the approval criteria for a PUD zone document amendment. Staff has made findings against this approval criteria if it's of interest to the commission to go through those. And there's more approval criteria. Some considerations for discussion. Again, so allowing this amendment will promote development of a vacant site. This amendment only applies to one parcel in the Turnberry PUD. So it's not like there will be multiple car washes developed throughout the development. It would just be limited to this one parcel. The proposed conditions will help mitigate some of the impacts associated with car washes. And then again, it kind of, as I mentioned, in order to achieve the 50 decibels or less at the property line, the noise study revealed that they would need a 8-foot tall noise wall to be constructed. But there may be some visual impacts from these walls to be considered. Staff is available for questions, should you have any.
Mr. Berry, you noted during your presentation that there were some findings that staff found were not compliant. Can you speak to those, or did I mishear what you had stated?
So yeah, what I was referring to is that there's some existing city standards that would help to address some of the applicants' concerns, or the neighbors' concerns. Some of them are not hard requirements. Like, so when we're talking about the financial viability of a car wash, we don't require a certain profit margin or something like that. We just have distance or separation requirements. And then for like air quality, there's statewide anti-idling measures, but those only apply to commercial vehicles. And there's nothing that we have locally that would regulate passenger vehicles like what would be coming through the car wash. So I think that's kind of what I meant, is that there's not, some of the concerns can't be addressed by city standards, where maybe some of them between the proposed conditions or the existing city standards can help address some of the neighbors' concerns.
And then just to follow up on that, just on the 8-foot fence requirement, you had stated that, so as that would be non-compliant with city code, and it would need to be amended for this PUD to be allowed for a side lot fence. Isn't the requirement a 6-foot fence, or I'm
You're
mistaken?
correct. Yep, you're correct. Yep. So the land development code limits height for side fences on commercial uses to be 6 feet tall. PUDs can regulate or create their own standards, kind of what we've talked about. So they would be able to write into their zone document side yard fences, height maximum 8 feet. But we'd have to make that either allow that through our discussion here and kind of add that as a condition of approval if that's something that is of interest to the commission.
And then before I ask the rest of the commissioners, just for a point of clarification on the information that was provided, because it wasn't necessarily noted in the presentation by the applicant, or what I could see just in my review of the sound study, and it wasn't happening at the time, would be the operations of vacuums, because I noticed there's a vacuum enclosure. So I noticed just during, yes, I'd asked the applicant to come forward to address those concerns, because I couldn't notice any of that operation during, it was focused towards the operation of the car wash itself. So if you could,
Vacuum system. The central, they're central vacs. One system is actually inside the building. The other one is in that kind of structure that's out against the second canopy. Both of the actual components are contained within buildings. This study does include, if you actually go to the hard report, and this is the synopsis of it, but if you go to the report, they actually have a page specific to the vacuums. The vacuums, the only way you hear something from the vacuum is when you pull it from the holster, you'll hear a, but you walk 10 feet away and it's gone. You know, it's a sound like you would hear from a central vac in a home where you don't hear the vacuum system, but once you take your hand away from the holster or you put your hand over it, you don't hear anything. And that's in its holster stage. When you pull it out, you do hear it, but 9 times out of 10, they're inside a car being used and not really held like this. But it does address, in the event that the holsters were dropped, what kind of impact that would be, and that this shows that impact.
so another question just related to the vacuum enclosure. Is that an enclosed building or is that a set of walls or fences around?
It's an actual, one is actually, one unit is physically inside the building.
I'm speaking to the vacuum enclosure that's outside of the building.
It's
So-
it's a full masonry enclosure.
But does it have a roof? So why I'm asking this is because to the question of, to the 8-foot wall, so even if we were to recommend, to approve, that would be a non-complying, is it not, would it be a non-compliant
No,
wall?
this enclosure is compliant.
Is 6 feet tall.
The enclosure here is compliant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners? Commissioner Ingleson?
Yes, I have a question. If you could go back to the noise, are those measurements with the building there? Or is that measurements taken when they did the study with the vacant lot?
Yeah, so this is a combination. So it's projected noise levels of the equipment that's being proposed with measurements on the site. So they conducted a review of what noise levels are on 104th based on their sensor locations, and then projected. So this image you're seeing is a projection of the proposed equipment. Does that?
Yes, so
It's
what
kind of
you're
a
saying is
stitch
these
together.
measurements are with the building there. That's what they're projecting that these would be.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And that is without the walls, and this is with the walls.
Correct.
Okay. And then what about the vacuums? I know that they're going to be enclosed, but when you have, I don't know how many vacuum stalls they're going to have. If you have 12 vacuum stalls and all the cars, I mean, they're all have cars there and they're using the vacuums, that's going to create some kind of noise, even though the central vacuum is behind a building, it seems.
Yeah, and this is my interpretation, and the applicant can feel free to add to this, but you'll see these red dots here are noting the vacuum locations, and then sort of around them is a bubble of a hotspot that I'm interpreting to be this 60 to 65 decibels. But as it quickly kind of dissipates, then as you get out here, this orange is 55 to 60, so it falls off fairly quickly compared to the tunnel, which would, as you kind of follow this out, goes from greater than 65, 65, 60, 50, 45 to 50. So it kind of, the car wash tunnel has a greater impact versus the vacuums have a hot spot, if that.
To answer your question directly, the way the study is performed is if the lot was full with cars, that's where the hot pink lines are. If there was a large queuing of lines, if all the vacuums were in use, that's where you're seeing the hard red with the dots at each stall. And then if the building was physically in operation, what that would look like, fully loaded at maximum capacity this is what the noise study would look like. The one on the right is showing the barrier fence. In order for us to meet the code, we were asked to show one without the fence, just in case the town decided that the fence did not look proper for the property. What would that look like sound-wise?
So yeah, it is a worst-case scenario.
So the left one would be worst case, no fence, no impedance, fully loaded, complete property fully loaded. The right side would be the 8-foot barrier fences, fully loaded.
Okay, my other question is to you. There is a decibel limit of 50 required by the city. So at what distance from the car wash is that 50 decibels? Is it the 50 decibels that is inside the car wash, or are we to take the 50 decibels at a certain distance?
Yeah, so this is exactly the discussion that we wanted to have with you all tonight. Originally proposed at the December meeting was a condition on the zoning for the 50 decibels. The noise study kind of revealed in order to accomplish the 50 decibels at the property line or less, they would need to install the walls. So we kind of wanted to have this dialogue with you all is, do we want to be at 50 or less at the property line? Then we need to probably allow for these 8-foot sound walls. If we're willing as a community to allow them to go without the walls, this scenario on the left would show what the impacts would be for noise. So it looks like at the property line, they're showing that 57 decibels and 56. So for the west and east.
So are the city's criteria 50 decibel is at the property line?
That is the condition that's proposed. So as a part of your motion, you could propose a different noise level. Like I said, in order to accomplish the 50 or less, they have to install the walls. If we are willing as a community to go to 60 or even it looks like 58 based on the noise study calculations, then they would be able to accomplish that without noise walls.
And just for clarification, the 50 decibels is not in the code. That's just something that the applicant and the city derived to deal with this car wash. So 50 decibels is a very low standard, and it's not a code requirement.
Okay, so the information that we got, though, it had to not exceed 50 decibels, right?
Yeah, so that was the condition that was proposed prior to having this noise study in front of you all. So I think it's as a part of your deliberation, you'll want to kind of talk as a body and see what is the number. Is it 50? Do we want to hold them to that higher standard, understanding that to accomplish that, there'll be maybe some give and take. If we're willing to accept a higher number, again, 104th was about 65 decibels, then that would be also up to you all as a body, as what is the number that we feel comfortable with requiring them to be under? Is it 50? Is it 60? Do we want to scrap that condition entirely? That would be kind of all up to you as a commission.
So just to be clear, a proposed condition is not the same as a requirement in the code, is what Heather was trying to explain. So it's a proposed condition by the city, not a requirement they have to meet.
Right.
If that helps with the conversation.
Actually, could you explain what you mean? What's the difference between a proposed condition and a requirement?
So a requirement would be, something in the code or a standard, engineering standard specification that they have to meet. A proposed condition is just something that you can propose as a condition to recommending whatever you're reviewing in front of you.
Okay, in other words, for city council to look at.
Right.
Okay, got it.
And point of order, just ask the chair or clarify to the chair before
Okay.
statements, just for point of order, just to keep the conversation clear, concise, and who's making statements. So thank you. Commissioner Schechter, any other points?
No, I was just, had that question, like what the procedural posture is of each of those
Thank you.
things, yeah.
Any other questions from any other commissioners? Commissioner Sanchez?
Yeah, just a quick question for staff. So we're looking at the same screen and the one on the right. Did we look at only an 8-foot wall, or did we look at any other different heights?
As a part of the noise study, they were asked what they would need to do to get under the 50 decibels. And so I think maybe they can speak to this a little bit more, but it was a all or nothing condition in terms of, and they've probably seen more iterations of the study, but like I said, that was the only ones that we've received as a city.
Yes.
So when the town had recommended that we come up with a decibel level that would be comfortable for all parties, 50 was the number that was arbitrated. We produced a sound study, or we went back to our sound experts and we said, look, we cannot be higher than 50 decibels. What do we need to do to achieve that? Well, they created close to 30 or 40 models. And they finally came back and they said, in order for us to achieve it, we can't do a 6-foot wall, it'll have to go to 8. That's the only way we can achieve it, because we have 10-foot doors and the sound, I guess, starts to dissipate downwards and it starts to dissipate inwards at a certain distance. So they said, in order for you to hit that, if you lowered your doors 2 feet, instead of had 10-foot doors, you had 8-foot doors, then you can do a 6-foot fence. Which we could achieve, but it takes away from the look of the building, and we didn't want to alter the ultimate look of the building, but it looked really odd to have this short door. So we proposed the 8-foot fence. When we produced this on Friday, it took us a while to put this together, and we handed it to Nicholas. He said internally, after looking at the renderings from all sides, showing the wall, we'd really like to see what this noise study would look like if the walls were not there, because we feel like it may take away from the look of everything surrounding the area. So we went back to the modelers. The client paid them a fortune to get it done in like 8 hours. And they came back with what you see on the left of what that would look like if we remove the walls, worst case scenario. And I think we're close to 8 or 9 decibels less than the ambient noise. So we're showing both versions. So if this committee decided we want to see the wall, that's the version that would be on the right. If they felt like the wall just doesn't look nice, what would that do to the surrounding areas? That's what the left would look like.
And those renderings with the 8-foot tall wall were in your packet, and I can bring them up here if that's beneficial, so we can compare them side by side. I'm seeing some head nods. Chair, is that the direction we want to go? See the other renderings?
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, this is from what we saw earlier, the neighboring properties. So you can see there's the installation of the wall. This is kind of a different view from the porch. So it kind of shows the wall. I think from a staff perspective, if you were to think about it from viewing it along 104th, right, you would have a Starbucks, a wall, car wash, wall, and then a different use. So you would lose the connectivity between uses. You would lose some of that natural feel to it. It would feel kind of segmented instead of transitioning from one use to another. So in addition to the rendering shown here is with a vinyl fence, I believe. In order to accomplish what they probably would need to, we're anticipating it being more of a masonry true sound wall. Like, so we could bear that out in the development plan process, but, so it'd be, I think, more segmented. And I can bring up that other rendering that they had prepared as well of those same views. So there's that one. There's that one there. So you can see it's a little more open, a little less division between neighboring uses and properties that are all commercial.
Question.
Yeah, Commissioner Sanchez.
Yeah, what effect would the wall have with any future development on that lot that's between the street and the car wash?
So yeah, the lot to the east.
Correct.
Yeah, so the lot to the east, their fence would have to be, or wall or whatever ends up being constructed, would have to be fully on their property. So they wouldn't be able, so there should be no impacts to that future development of the site, the adjacent site.
Any additional questions from the commissioners? No.
Okay. Sorry.
Sorry. Commissioner Van Huzen.
Thank you. Does the city have a decibel code?
We do not. There's nothing in the land development code that would otherwise regulate the noise levels. There are performance standards that speak to nuisance, which is a little bit more loosely defined. There's not necessarily a hard noise level at 0, noise level at 100, anything like that that's in the code. It's just the nuisance definition, which can vary based on interpretation or complaints or whatever. But
So the nuisance code, what is the decibel level for that varying or opposed to what hours, or how does it work?
it is related to hours, but it's, like I said, it just is defined as a nuisance, a noise level that's a nuisance. So it doesn't have a measurable, quantifiable, which is why I think we were proposing to introduce a quantifiable number so that it's more easily enforceable for our future planners and code enforcement team.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schechter.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I think maybe I personally wasn't here for that meeting, but when this 50 decibels was arrived at, was that this commission where that happened?
It was the first well, it was the first talks about the project in the very, very beginning.
Okay.
It was, hey, can you guys, what decibel level will you be at? We talked back and forth with planning, and we said 50, we could probably meet at 50. I think that the federal is somewhere around 55 or 60. But we were talking back and forth with planning, and we just arbitrarily came up with a number.
When you say talk about it, was it like here publicly, or is that like, none of that was?
Before submissions.
Okay.
Before we submitted, we kind of had this is what we want to see from you. Yeah.
Okay, so this is basically working with the city before coming here. That's where the
Yes.
50 was arrived at.
Right.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I do have a second.
Yeah, Commissioner Schechter.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a little confused as to what we're being asked to decide. Like, maybe my understanding is simplistic, that like, we get a proposal, we look at the elements, we decide, yes, this meets the elements or not. But it sounds like you're also saying, well, we can also decide to draft ourselves, put in a number ourselves on the recommendation. Is that, see what I mean? Like, how many different options are we looking at?
So tonight, you're being asked to whether to amend the PUD or not to allow the car wash use, to recommend to city council. And staff has suggested several conditions of approval
Okay,
for you to entertain. You
Okay.
can forward a recommendation to council for whatever the commission decides. You can forward a recommendation for denial, you can forward a recommendation for approval with conditions, or you can forward a recommendation of approval without any conditions.
okay,
And the conditions don't have to match what staff's conditions are.
all
We
right.
just are suggesting those are things for you to consider.
I have a third question.
Sure.
Sorry.
Sorry, can I jump off of that too? I just wanted to touch on, so zoning is setting the rules So I think that's why we're having this dialogue, right? Is what is the number? Is because we're coming up with those rules right here in this meeting. Usually, we try to bake all that out through our process and just bring you, this is what we're asking, yes or no. In this case, because information had kind of come out in between meetings, we wanted to afford you all that opportunity to have that dialogue with amongst yourselves and the community, because that feels more appropriate for a community decision than necessarily a staff level decision on what would be
Excellent.
acceptable.
Thanks.
So.
Yeah, my question is, anyone here who feels qualified, if you could, like, it looks like sort of what we're designing between is like, 50 decibels at the boundary versus maybe 56 or 57. Would someone here be qualified to just say, 50 decibels, that is basically the noise level of X, and 56, that's noise level of Y? Yeah.
So,
Like, it's not as loud as a lawnmower, it's quieter than that, probably.
65 decibels is what you hear if you were to stand outside your home and listen to traffic on the road. That's kind of an
65,
average.
okay.
Okay? When we were on the video, what you notice is anywhere from like 55 to 65, if it was, we chose to do that at 1 o'clock in the morning to try to get as least amount of vehicles driving as possible so you didn't get that noise. We wanted to say, if we were in a quiet neighborhood, it was early in the morning or late at night, what would somebody hear? So that ambient noise, just quiet, nobody doing anything, hovers around 55 decibels. That's
see.
completely silent. If you re-review the videos, you'll see that when I shut my mouth and I remain quiet, you'd see it bounce down to about 55, 56 decibels.
Okay.
So what we're showing here is that at the lot line, we would be adding a decibel more than what would be a completely quiet night
Okay, that makes sense.
at the lot line. So that means as you go
Right.
further out, and if you notice the slide to the left, anywhere that's kind of the dark green where you see the number 41, that's kind of, what the sound would be ambient-wise.
Okay. Yeah.
Just to circle back on one last comment. One of the very first things I said when I started speaking was we added the landscape per code. When last minute we were asked to show an additional exhibit of what it would look like if the fence wasn't there, just in case the committee decided they didn't like the way that looked. They want us, what would that look like sound-wise? We didn't have the time to put in the landscape that we could put in that area that would make up for it, evergreens, a row of those. So if there was a suggestion to take the fence down, but we want to see a row of, 6-foot evergreens, the client is totally for that. Both sides.
Commissioner Schechter, any other questions?
Nope, that's great, thank you.
Any other questions from any of the commissioners? Seeing none? Thank you. I would now, just for staff, so my script is for the previous meeting, so I may need to call for points of clarification to make sure that we proceed correctly. So I would like to call anybody in attendance this evening that would like to speak on this case. Please come to the podium if you'd like to address this case.
Good evening. My name is John Szymanski. I live at the 10431 Revere Court. I'm within that less than 500 feet from where this proposed car wash is going to be. My neighbor Bob and I, we've been attending all the meetings, and I must say, looking at the video, the movie, I was kind of impressed how well it was put together, especially with the decibel levels being at 55, 60 late at night, no traffic whatsoever. Not to mention, it looked like the vacuum cleaners were actually facing the main street itself, and you could not see any visible residential areas in that photo to begin with. So you really don't know what kind of impact that had on neighbors behind you. I believe that the decibel level is going to be a lot higher than what they're proposing, especially when you start getting our westerly winds coming in, everything else, that sound is going to travel. Another question I got is these retaining walls they want to put in there. this is all proposed and hearsay. It's like, what's the decibel levels going to be at the vacuum cleaners when you enclose all the sound inside there? What damage are you going to do to the individuals that are cleaning the cars? So that's why I say I'm not impressed with the video they showed, because like I said, from what I can see is the vacuum cleaners were facing the main street. I can see if they had the vacuum cleaners facing 104th and let the sound go out that way, I would have no problems with it. But like I said, sound's going to travel. You can put an 8-foot wall up there. The sound's going to be contained within that property. It's not going to be any good. We've proposed that we have 5 car washes within 3 to 5 miles of our neighborhood to begin with. Utilize this property for something that's going to benefit the community. We have one lousy grocery store. We have one little restaurant, the State House. We have nothing else in this neighborhood. Give us something that's going to draw people into the neighborhood, that we're going to spend money, draw some revenue. Not another car wash. That'll give us 6 within 5 miles. And we have nothing else to show for it. I know the property taxes are pretty high in Commerce City, which probably keeps a lot of people, businesses from wanting to come in there. But I think we can do better and actually get something that's going to attract customers, that it's going to bring money into the community. And you're going to draw a lot more money coming into this community by putting even a restaurant, sports bar, anything in there besides a car wash. But like I said, I'm not impressed with their numbers and everything else. Their decibel levels, yeah, are late at night. One lousy car goes through the car wash. You see there's no traffic anywhere, no vacuum cleaners going. You know, you can sit outside by my street and say, oh, we got 55, 60 decibels. Yeah, it's a quiet neighborhood right now. Let's see what happens when we load that thing with vehicles that are running not 24/7, but all day, all night. That's going to make those decibel levels go a lot higher. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Have a
Mr.
good evening.
Szymanski. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission?
Hi, I'm Bob Hannon. I think you all have a letter in your packets from me. I won't go over that because obviously you've got it in there. Could you go to that photo from the backyard, please, that shows the fence? The one that has the picture up in the corner. That one. Okay, so do you see where that red mark is coming from where they're showing that is? So the two plots above that is my home and John's home. We are basically the only 3 homes that have any impact on this because no one else, we block it for everybody else. So that is why we are here. I have to agree with John as well. That study, the noise study was done with 1 car at 1 a.m. What's it gonna be at 2 in the afternoon when there's 40 cars over there and 20 different vacuums running? That is my backyard. That is what I'm gonna see, and that's what I'm gonna hear, and that's what I'm gonna smell. And that is why we're here asking you guys to, you know, if this was your home, I mean, this is my dream home. I built a 5-bedroom house on a plot right there. Would you want this in your backyard? I mean, there's just nothing else I can say. When I built this home, I had to tell the developers why I wanted that lot. And that was because it faced west. The mountain views are gorgeous. I don't know how tall that building is gonna be, but that's gonna interrupt with some of my mountain views. And now we've got a proposal for an 8-foot wall as well. I mean, the aesthetics are gonna be gone if you put that wall in. And if you don't put that wall in, we're gonna hear everything. So, I mean, you guys have the call on this. I appreciate you taking the time and hearing me and reading that letter and take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else attending who would like to speak? Seeing none. Is there anyone attending virtually who would like to speak on this case?
No one has signed up in advance, and no one has raised their hand currently.
I will close the public hearing portion of this case, and I will ask for a motion. So point of order. So before we open for a motion, Commissioner Ingleson had asked if we could debate the case before we open, because of the complexity and all of the issues that were addressed,
You can deliberate before moving.
before we have a motion. Okay. So, anyone would like to make a comment or point, or amongst ourselves as a commission? Commissioner Ingleson, your microphone.
I'm not a fan of the 8-foot wall. I think that would be too high, and I don't think it would look good in that area. In the video, when they were doing the sound away from it, there were times when it got up to 68. And I know sound carries. I've done noise studies myself, so I know what's involved, but I just think that in the middle of the afternoon with all the cars there and the vacuums going and the car wash going, that it's going to be higher than 50 decibels. And I don't think that it meets all the requirements of what the zoning, what we're supposed to look at. And it says in the rezoning or zone changes that it has to meet all of the criterias. And one of them is the area for which zone changes requested has changed or is changing to such a degree that it is in the public interest to allow new or density. And I think that because we already have 5 car washes up in that area and one just opened, that I think this lot would be better served as something else besides a car wash. I think we have a lot of car washes in that area also. I don't know what would be better served. I think a restaurant would be great, professional building, but I don't think that we need to have, or it's in the public interest to have another car wash in the northern area, seeing that there's already 5 up there. So those are my 3.
Thank you, Commissioner Ingleson. Commissioner Schechter.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on something you brought up, the, like how the zone has changed or is changing to a certain degree. So I'd like to, I don't know if we heard it, is this in our documents, how that, like B6, how 6 is satisfied? I'd like to hear the strongman case of that, or, you know, the iron case of that, like, from that side.
If you could speak into your microphone, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if we have that or how that's been met. Yeah, we're struggling with the elements, right?
Absolutely. So just for clarity, you're looking for how they could meet this approval criteria that's been brought up by Commissioner Eggleston, the changing to a
Correct.
degree.
Yeah, so the analysis for sections, yeah, keep going, lower numeral 6, okay.
Let me go to my staff report, because that looks like that's from a different case.
Yeah, that was a different case maybe.
All right. So yeah, this was provided for you in your documents, and it was for the last standard too. We said it was
Thank
numeral
you.
6. All right.
So B
E, comply with city standards.
or,
Looks like I used letters, so I'm not helping myself out here
see.
at all. Use of, so Commissioner Eggleston, were you looking at the approval criteria for a PUD zone document or for a zone change? Because there's a small difference. I just want to make sure we're looking at the right criterion.
Okay, it's LDC 9 or 21, 32, 32 rezoning or zone changes.
Okay,
Approval
yes.
criteria, an application may be approved if.
Yeah, so a PUD zone document carries different criteria than a zone change, although they're functionally similar in terms of setting the rules for development. Because of the customization per individual sites, that approval criterion wouldn't necessarily be applicable here because it's specific for a PUD zone document. But we can look at this criterion and see if it, because this is somewhat similar. So the PUD, addresses a unique situation. There's criterion about connecting with existing infrastructure. There's criterion about mitigating impacts. Is there one specifically that is of interest to the commission to discuss?
If I can make a point. So I believe, just from what we've heard this evening, point C, E, and F would be applicable to this case. Because this isn't a unique situation, as I think that was the point that Commissioner Ingleson was trying to make, is that just to the density, that it's a service it's not a unique service that's not provided in Commerce City. I think there's point E is applicable, as you had made a point during your presentation, that to meet the sound, where there was this initial goal of 50 decibels, that it would be enforcing an 8-foot fence, which is against current city code. So we would have to make an exception. And then, E, so it's also the integrated, connected, adjacent development through streets, connections, and sidewalks. So you'd be bifurcating this site from the rest of the PUD with these walls just to put this non-unique use on the site. And then also what we're hearing is F, that to the maximum extent feasible, proposal mitigates any potential significant impacts, because we're hearing from community members that this may have impacts to their houses. So I believe by all of those criteria that this would not meet the zone change of the initial PUD. Commissioner Schechter.
Thanks. Yeah, like that was nice. I liked hearing, about the potential impacts. It makes me think about, some impacts when you buy a house on a lot. There's some things you can reasonably expect. I think like one of those is, if you buy across the street from a commercial zoned lot, eventually sometime in the future, you're going to get commercial buildings there. But I was interested in the aspect of the smell of a lot of cars waiting. And then, also, sound of a bunch of cars idling and maybe people with the modified exhaust to be loud, even though that's illegal in Colorado. I don't know, so like, we don't have any data in front of us to judge whether that would be over or under the limit. Does that make sense? Or whether that would be a nuisance or not, those like smell and the sound of cars.
Any additional comments? And then just to follow up on Commissioner Schechter's point, because I also believe it would be with the connectivity and potential nuisance to another service, to the services that aren't necessarily provided in this area of Commerce City, that it could be a potential nuisance to another commercial development that may move in at the corner. So I believe that could be also an issue as well.
Yeah, I think that would be the most impinged upon lot. Like, that's literally going to go right there. Whatever comes in the future, that you might not have an outdoor cafe right there if there's a lot of cars just sitting idling, or if it's loud right there. Yeah.
Any other discussion?
I concur with Commissioner Biltos' comments.
So in light of the discussion, can I have a motion on the case?
Yeah, I have a motion. I move that the Planning Commission enter a finding the requested PUD zone document amendment for the property located 12411 East 104th Avenue containing case PUDA 23-0004 fails to meet the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such finding, recommend that the City Council deny the PUD amendment.
Can you insert the criterion? There's that little asterisk there. Which criterion is not being met?
Sure. And the criterion I would say is not met is criteria C. The PUD addresses a unique situation, confers a substantial benefit to the city.
Thank you.
Second that motion.
I would like to make an amendment to the motion. If we could also include criterias E and F as outlined in our discussion.
Thank you.
Any
Yeah, I
additional
accept that.
any additional discussion need to happen relative to the motion? Or do we need to restate the motion that we're making the
I
recommendation?
believe we just have to accept the friendly amendments, and then we can have the motion restated by Schechter.
Okay. Okay, I'll restate my motion. Okay. I move that the Planning Commission enter a finding that the requested PUD zone document amendment for the property located 12411 East 104th Avenue, contained in case PUDA 23-0004, fails to meet the criteria of the Land Development Code, and based upon such finding, recommend that the City Council deny the PUD agreement or amendment. And the criteria that we find which are not met are criteria C, E, and F.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any additional discussion that needs to happen on the motion? Seeing none, can we please open electronic voting on the case? The motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstain.
For clarification, for those attending this evening or watching virtually, this is not the conclusion of the case. This is a recommendation to City Council. The City Council hearing is scheduled for March 3rd. And so that will be the formal or final action on this case.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Berry. And I believe that is the last case for the evening. So I now close the public hearing portion of the case, or of the Planning Commission meeting. Is there any commission business to discuss this evening? So I have one point that I want to bring up, and it's relative to a study session that we had previously, and about the job of the planning commissioner. There was a couple points that, actually, it's in section, starts on page 41, but it's 14 ways to build a better planning commission. So we don't need to set dates for these, but just to get as I think at our next study session to discuss them and maybe talk about this, because I don't want this to be a unilateral thing coming from me. But there were 2 things about item number 7, so meet periodically with your city council or county board to exchange ideas and assess your mutual objectives, because that was a point that was brought up as I recently went through to interview for another term, is that asking if I understood that, but I think if it was a mutual discussion between us as a planning commission and to hear the thoughts of what the,
So you're proposing having more joint study sessions with?
or a study session just to talk about, because normally we meet on land development code, or it's an issue that's ahead of us, or that's going to be coming to us. But similar to the training sessions that we've had, I think it would be good to hear, to have a face-to-face discussion as to how, help me help you. I think that would be a good point. And then another point would also be, where was it? Just need my glasses. There was something about meetings with the public. So similar to that, where it would be an open session for public comment on how we're doing as a commission. I think that was another point that was in here. So I think those were two that I would like to flag, but at our next study session, because I don't know if people have had a chance to look at the book, but there's a lot of good points in here, and it just talks about, hey, it's kind of us to shape how we want this thing to run, but it was, and I think we're doing a lot of things that are in this book, but there's some things that we might want to visit to help improve the commission. Anything else?
I like that.
Right?
I think that's great, and we can have a study session after your next meeting if you'd like.
I think that would be an applicable time. That
Okay.
would be a good time. If we're not having another training session, I think that might be the next study session that we would hold, is to talk about this book or any other points that we would want to address going ahead.
Great.
Is there any attorney business to discuss?
No, Chair.
Are there any staff updates this evening?
Just letting you know, the Carbajal Auto zoning got approved at City Council on second reading last night. So that was the, if you recall, the car dealership over in the Irondale area. So that was approved last night on second reading.
Thank you. And are we scheduled to have a meeting in March?
Yes, we do have at least one agenda item, possibly two, but more likely just one agenda item on March 4th.
Thank you.
And I think we already had a study session scheduled for that day as well, right? To maybe continue discussing the LDC?
Yes, if you wanted to have more discussion about the LDC, we could do that on March 4th, but we can also have the study session to discuss these topics you raised tonight.
I think it would be if the LDC, the publicly available LDC was available for us to discuss at that time, then it would make sense to have that would be more incumbent to our
Yeah.
discussions. So it'd be subsequent to
More
have
like
a-
the April. So we, in terms of the LDC, you have a City Council Planning Commission joint study session scheduled on April 14th, and we hope to get you out a draft at the end of March so that you have a couple weeks to look at it. So we could potentially do that study session at the beginning of April or in May if you wanted to talk about the LDC draft, depending on how much time you need to review the draft document. I'm just a little worried if we get it out to you
Sure.
at the end of March, doesn't give you much time to look at it for the April
How
meeting.
about we discuss that at the March meeting, as things will be a little bit
Okay.
more clear, and then
Yeah,
we can have a
and
better
we'll have a better
understanding of.
sense of when we can get you the draft,
Yeah,
too.
so let's discuss that during
Okay.
the March meeting.
But you do want to have the study session to talk about the things you read in the book on March 4th.
I believe so, if everybody else would be open to that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm down. I'd like to talk about how we do things.
Perfect. Yes.
Great. That's it for staff.
The time is now 7:27, and call this planning commission meeting to a close. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't, I asked him, he wasn't sure that it was working.
All I see is